My problem wasn't the cancer, it was the aloneness. And if I long for anything in my life, it's connection. I'm trained as a psychologist, and I've done 2 master's degrees and a doctorate. And in all of my training, telling your own story is like a big no-no. The whole purpose of this is hopefully to help other people feel less alone in these complicated moments in our lives, where we all let go of all of that fear and bullshit and just exist together as our most authentic, flawed, gorgeous, fucked up selves. When we can be ourselves, we have the best and most perfect chance at connection. I'm Sarah Schmidt, and this is Wholey Schmidt, Season 1. Hi, welcome back to Wholey Schmidt. I'm Sarah Schmidt. Today we have a great episode to share with you. This one was a really hard one for me to record. And I just want to put it out there that its development took many decades of my life. Today we're going to talk about body image, how we feel about ourselves, how we relate to our physical beings, and the impact that that has on everything in our lives. If you've listened to previous episodes, you have a little sense of the journey that my body has traveled. Being sick, having cancer, recovering from all the trauma that my body went through was really not easy. And there was a ripple effect. There were a lot of consequences to that experience that lingered for me and still linger to this day. The reason I really wanted to talk about this topic was because over the last maybe 3 years of my life, I've really started to relate differently to my physical self. The integration between my head and my heart really solidified. And I started to experience the world, not just from my mental self, but my physical self as well. And in many ways, the whole world opened up to me. All of a sudden, I could feel where my feelings were in my body. I could be present to people differently. And that work that I did, that integration work, that somatic work, really led to just an intense amount of joy, satisfaction, pleasure, all the good things, just simply by being in my body. So I want to invite you today to listen. Listen with an open mind, listen with an open heart. We're in a really, really unique moment when we think about body image. This Ozempic era that we found ourselves in, it comes with all these promises of a magic bullet, right? If we're thin, we'll be happy. Well, I want to challenge that a little bit because for me, happiness was not and has never been about the number on the scale. Yeah, at a certain weight or in a range of my weight, I feel better in my own skin, but really, I've been very thin and very miserable at times. So I want to invite you to listen today and think about things like, where does contentment live in you? Where does joy live in your body? Where do all the beautiful emotions that we've been invited and equipped with as humans, where do they live in your physical self? How easily do you express them from not just, the way you think about them or talk about them, but the way you actually allow yourself to feel them? For me, joy and contentment and happiness have been found in the integration, in the ability to just be in my skin. So with that, I invite you to listen to this episode, and I can't wait for the conversation that we might be able to have. I was very aware of my physical self when I was probably 10. Which when I think about that, it's kind of amazing. I think it had to have happened sooner than that, right? Like, how did I get away with not having that awareness before that? But it was 10. I was at my aunt's house on a Saturday helping with cleaning. And after we would clean, she would usually give us a dime. And my cousin and I would get to go to the bakery, which was like a block or so away, and get a donut. And she suggested to me that maybe I not get the donut, that it was about time that I started wearing a girdle. So this was 1982-ish. Maybe I was a little bit younger. I'd never heard the word before. I had no idea what she meant. So I knew by the context of the comment that it wasn't a positive one. I remember going home and telling my mom, and she was very upset that that had been said to me. And I then had to ask what it was, and she told me. But unfortunately, like, the damage kind of had already been done, because now I was really self-conscious that I had a tummy. And it's funny because I think about my kids at that age, 8, 9, 10 years old, and like their bodies. And I even have seen pictures of myself then, and it was a really healthy, fit, perfectly appropriate little girl at that age. It did launch me into this universe of being aware that people were looking at my physical self and had opinions about it. I think it fed what was already kind of an underlying awareness in our family and attention to like your physical self. And that being kind of a representation of your control over yourself, your mastery over yourself, your level of discipline. There was a lot of pride put in appearance and a lot of expectation around appearance, and a sense that we had to keep up an appearance. There was just a lot of conversation about, my uncle was always like, he had a new diet and he was going to eat almonds, for a while. Or my mother was at Weight Watchers meetings much of my childhood, or making frozen dinners that she got from, like, I don't know if it was like Nutrisystem or Jenny Craig or something, She'd make these beautiful meals for us that were like from the garden, and a chicken from the guy down the road, potatoes that were in the cellar that she grew. And then she would microwave this frozen meal. And that was always really confusing and left me feeling like, well, what's wrong with what we're eating if you're not eating it? And there was a lot of attention paid to just weight. My dad weighed himself every morning, I think. And my wake-up call was often, we had a doctor's scale in the bathroom down the hall. And he would walk down the hall in the morning as he woke up and weigh himself, and you would hear the clanking of the scale. And that would be what often woke me up for school. And so those really subtle, not so subtle messages were really powerful. And it's really important what you look like. And there's a standard to which we need to try to adhere. Prior to that, I think I was very indifferent. I mean, I really liked my red hair as a little person. My grandpa loved my red hair. He used to come out to our house quite regularly, and I would see him, and he always was very sweet and kind. And I knew he liked my like flaming orange hair. I guess he had red hair as a little boy. So I felt this form of connection with him around that. But as I got older, those kind of other moments that were not so positive just started to pile up. And I think they do for a lot of people. Instead of being able to really appreciate the uniqueness of me and how tall I was, or the red hair, or whatever, it started to become an object of taunt. And kids would make a lot of comments to me, like, "Where'd you get your hair? Kmart red light special?" And I started to feel really self-conscious about being the tallest. I was very tall in my class for a while. For a long time, it feels like. I had big feet, I had the red hair. I just started to feel more like an outlier than similar to the other kids in my class. And I just remember as a little kid and as like in middle school, just feeling like I didn't fit in general. And I think that was a universal experience. So I'm not arguing it was unique to me, but I could have listed for you the ways in which I felt like I did not fit in. It was a long list. And it was a list that I just was aware of all the time. I felt like socially awkward. I felt awkward in the classroom. I felt physically awkward. I felt tall. I felt like I stood out. I felt like I had big feet. I had felt all these things, and I really wasn't able to appreciate how unique and special I really was, because all of these things felt very negative. I wanted so badly to just be like normal, and I never really felt normal as a little kid. Whatever normal is, I didn't feel it. Now, I'm not sure anybody felt it, but that was certainly something that I was like, oh, I wish. By the time I was 20, I viewed my body as something I had to control and manipulate and sort of tame and, like punish into shape. It was never a source of like pleasure or enjoyment. And I felt like it was kind of always leaving me short. When the diagnosis hit me, I was really taken aback because in the years leading up to it, I felt like I was doing a really good job of taking care of myself. I loved being active. I exercised, I worked out, I played tennis. I loved being at the gym at school. It wasn't like I did it to punish myself. I did it because I really enjoyed it. And so it felt like a real betrayal when I found out I had cancer. I really felt like I've done everything I possibly can to take care of this body, and now you're betraying me. And, it was just very, very confusing. It was super confusing. And I felt this instant sense of resentment toward it, and it was going to make my life more difficult, like this body. Upon learning that I had cancer, I think I almost instantaneously severed the connection between my head and my heart, my head and my physical self. I wanted to completely deny this body. It was failing me. It had fucked everything up. I was angry at it. I was resentful toward it. And I didn't know any other way to handle that situation. Cancer just made that all more real and just kind of like sealed the envelope, because now I had all these scars and I felt physically horrible and my energy was tanked. And when my hair grew back, it wasn't the same hair. It was totally different color and texture. And my skin was forever changed by the radiation. I don't have a spleen anymore. And that actually is a kind of important organ I figured out. So I had all these other issues that were coming into play. The radiation completely destroyed my thyroid. And so at 21, I started taking Synthroid and had to deal with a thyroid condition that was, not treatable by, autoimmune protocol diet, so to speak. There's a lot of things that I couldn't control. And if I didn't like myself to begin with, now I had 13 inches of scars to further prove that I didn't like myself. It was like just more evidence for me. And it just kept me more in my head. In my mind, there was something wrong with my brain. So I would just really just focus on this part of me and how I was smart. I could do really hard intellectual things. I loved an intellectual challenge. And I just went into overdrive in a compensatory kind of way, if this can't do it right, then this will make up for it. During the time I was sick and during treatment, I lost an enormous amount of weight and I got super skinny and I got all kinds of positive compliments. You look great. Oh my God. What are you doing? I'm like, cancer. Everyone was like, well, that's a bonus, wow, good things can come out of bad situations. And all that attention around my weight by people who knew me and knew what was going on was really, really, really fucked up. And it really messed with me because it was like I was supposed to feel great about being skinny, and cancer was like a gift to get me there. Eating was actually really hard to do. And I had to really plan meals around do I have enough water, or is this something I can chew? Will I be able to swallow it? If you have any radiation that gets near your mouth, your salivary glands shut down. So you actually can't eat because if you chew something like a pretzel, it just becomes dust in your mouth and there's no saliva to break it down. And then the interior of my esophagus was just burned. It was like blistered, and swallowing was excruciating for weeks on end. And all of that rebounded, but there were a lot of days where a milkshake was the only thing I could do, right? Because I couldn't swallow. It was just a whole bunch of like things. I had a nurse. She was so lovely. She pulled me aside one day and she said, "You have to eat." Like, I couldn't eat. I was so nauseous and vomiting all the time. I mean, I was throwing up everything and every day. She said, "You have to eat. What can you eat?" And she's like, "Eat anything. Go get French fries. Go eat milkshakes. Go get anything." It was terrible advice. Because what I started doing was just soothing myself with foods that were just really not good for me. I did it and a nurse told me to. So it felt like I had been given permission. That food also tasted great, and made me feel better. What a high we get from like a pint of Ben & Jerry's. So I just started to soothe myself, and I ate and I ate and I ate. I just kept eating and I got fat. And I didn't care because I didn't like myself anyway. And I didn't feel like it really mattered. I just needed my outsides to match my insides. I mean, I felt horrible. I felt kind of destroyed. I felt like the world had just totally let me down. And I also felt really rejected too, because I was so alone through this whole experience that there wasn't really anyone on a daily basis to be like, "Hey, I love you. It's okay. Come on, we can do this together. I'll cook for you, or I'll do this." I was eating dorm food, and I got into a really bad habit of that. And I just let myself kind of sink into it. And I ended up in a really unhealthy place. It's like the pendulum just kept swinging and it never settled into a balanced place. And I think because I thought I wasn't going to live very long, it didn't matter. If you thought you were going to die tomorrow, what would you eat today? I don't know that you'd worry too much about how many calories it has, or its fat content, or if it's really all that nutritious. You just would fucking eat whatever you liked. And that's kind of how I lived. So I had started exercising, and I don't remember why I started doing this, but I started working out with a personal trainer, and everything hurt in my body. I just had enormous amounts of aches and pains. And I ended up tearing the meniscus in my knee, and I had to have it repaired. And so I had a scope, simple procedure. And weeks after, it just wasn't getting any better. And it hurt so bad. My knees just hurt. And I went back to the orthopedic surgeon. And I was super frustrated. And I yelled at him. I was like, "You didn't fix it. It hurts so bad." And I was complaining. I was just complaining. And he said to me, "Look, I've done everything I can do for you. You need to lose weight. Your knees hurt because you're overweight." And I was just really floored by that. It was awful to hear. And I knew he was right. And I wrestled with that for the next few days, maybe. And then there was just a day where I just got fed up and I said, "That's it. We're not going to live like this anymore." I was probably 38 and a half, on my way to 40. Clearly, I wasn't going to die at 40. So I thought, boy, I better just get my shit together. If I'm going to keep living, I don't want to live this way. I really was aware of the horrible example I was setting for my daughters in particular. And I thought, oh my God, what am I teaching her? And that was really kind of an additive part of this that just pushed me into literally one day. I did what I knew how to do. I started tracking everything I ate. And I started losing weight and I started feeling good. And then there was a moment, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 pounds down when I thought, wow, there's some foods that make me feel great and some foods that make me feel horrible. And I started tuning in and paying attention. And I think just maybe losing that little bit of weight and starting to feel a little bit better in my skin helped me tune in just a little bit differently. And I started to just pay attention. I have a dear friend who I get to connect with on a regular basis. And she will often say, "Where do you feel that in your body?" And I realized that embodiment is a choice I make every day. And it probably will have to be for my whole entire life because it doesn't come to me naturally. And I spent so much time disembodied, and it is a really easy go-to for me. It's an easy default. It's a terrible default, but it's really easy. And choosing to be in my body and sitting with that is always better, but it's always harder. I think it's important to define this word embodiment. And what I mean by it is this interconnectedness between head and heart, the mental and the physical self, and truly living out of that place of connection. I don't actually think I started to figure out how to make that connection again between head and heart, how to literally heal the division that I created until a year ago. And that was really turning 50. I lived my 40s in a skinny body that felt fit, and I got a lot of positive. Oh my God, the world loves a weight loss story. Well, they love you and they hate you. But you get a lot of attention, a lot of how did you do it? Oh my God, how did you keep it off? What are you eating? What aren't you eating? And fascinated by this. I mean, just it's obscene, the level of attention that we give to this, especially for women, right? But it really wasn't until I turned 50 that I thought body might look good to other people, but it doesn't feel good to me. And why? That process I now recognize is going to be a daily choice that I will make for the rest of my life, is to choose when I feel something to tune inward and figure out where in my physical self it's living and what it's trying to say to me. What is that part of me trying to say? As a clinical psychologist, I've been trained in all these different modalities that are deemed therapeutic. But in all of my training and all of my years of practice in different forms, I never really studied, learned, or practiced anything that falls under the umbrella of internal family systems. And for me right now, that is my go-to, is the awareness that in me exist all these parts. And they're all there for a reason, and they all serve a purpose, and they're all moving and reacting and living inside of me on any given day. And I've been really working on understanding those parts of me, appreciating them, communicating with them. It can sound a little crazy sometimes, but in the morning, I often sit with a cup of tea or coffee in a quiet few moments, and I have a little meeting with my parts, with the controller part of me, with the firefighter parts of me, with the anxious parts of me, the hypervigilant parts of me, the parts that are so little and are part of the very, very tiny Sarah who learned how to survive in a world that just asked a lot of big things of her at a young age. I talk to those parts. I ask them how they're doing. I ask them what they need. I reassure them that I've got things, I can handle things, that I might not need them today, that they can take a break. And I have found that level of awareness has helped me to be less reactive and more present. When I'm in my reactive state, I'm not present to what's happening. I'm living in a future of worry or fear or defensiveness or whatever it might be. But when I'm tuning into my parts and I'm thinking about how I'm blended with them, I am my most peaceful, most authentic, alive self. And then I can be the best partner, parent, employee, whatever, friend, daughter, sister. Totally transformative for me. And how does that relate to my physical self? I like me, because I've started to appreciate these parts that prompted me to not take care of myself. I wanted to shut them down. I wanted them to go away. I wanted to silence them. So I did that by fine. And I just, whatever, eat a bag of chips. I don't need to do that anymore. I mean, sometimes I still want to do that, because who doesn't? But I don't need to do that. I'm self-soothing, right? We try to teach infants and children how to self-soothe. I'm actually doing it now. The work of internal family systems has been the key to being embodied on a daily basis. The routines of self-care that I engage in every day are really my lifeline, because when I feel physically good, I just have an energy about me that makes me just a better human. And one of the things I've made a huge connection to is the way I eat and the way I move is night and day for me in terms of how I parent and how I'm a partner. When I feed myself well and I move my body, I feel really good and I feel mentally strong. I feel calmness. And it's from that place of calm, strength that I can then handle a lot of things. I'm 51 years old and my body's been through a lot. I want to feed it food that it's going to really love. And so I really view my food as medicine. And I think about things like how much protein am I getting in a day? How many cups of leafy greens am I getting in a day? I put a lot of thought into the food that I eat. I love to cook my food. I love to cook for my family. And I find that the more I just make this a part of my routine, the easier it is to do a lot of other things. I love moving my body, and I do that mostly through strength training. For me, being mentally strong is related to me feeling physically strong. And so I love to lift heavy things. I've had to accept that I have a physical frame that is just, I'll never be a stick thin supermodel. And, oh gosh, woe is me, right? If I want to lift heavy at the gym, I really can't be much lighter than I am right now. I can't get a good workout in. I have no energy. I feel like muscle is the key to aging well. And I don't want to lose the muscle I have in my body because, frankly, I want to be able to lift my grandchildren and I don't want to slip on the ice and break my hip. That's it's simple. So I eat well, I move my body, and I prioritize sleep. It's sometimes really hard with teenagers, but I've had to give up some control over that and trust that they're going to do some work to take care of themselves. And that at 9:15 or 9:30 every night, I can go to bed and shut it down. And I do a lot of things to protect that sleep. It's just this simple, sleep hygiene things. I keep my room cool. I keep my room dark. I don't drink. I don't eat before bed. I try to limit my screen use at night. It's simple stuff, but it requires a level of discipline. When I don't sleep well, a lot of things fall apart for me. I become instantly crabby. I want caffeine. I don't feel like going to the gym. And I'm a really miserable mother. And my kids now will know. They'll be like, Mom, did you work out today? And I'll have to be like, oh shit, I did. What else do I need to do? Or, they are incredibly supportive of Mom taking care of herself. And they know it's a priority and they know it makes their life easier too. So it's kind of neat. It's sort of like, I get it that I got to put on my own oxygen mask before I can put theirs on. And I think they're starting to understand that they also need to take care of themselves. And I'm seeing them make really good choices in their lives about how they're taking care of themselves. So I feel like I'm modeling it for them in a way that it maybe wasn't modeled for me. And I hope that they're seeing that you can take care of yourself regardless of kind of what's going on in your life, that there are just manageable, simple things that you can do. I grew up in a family where there was a lot of shame. I was raised in a religion that was shaming, and that religion influenced my schooling for 12 years. It's really, really hard to shake that level of indoctrination. But increasingly, I feel like I've been able to rewrite the script, rewrite, the narrative. I think this is going to be my life's work. I don't know that I'll ever get to a place where I can say that I don't feel a certain amount of it, but I do feel like it's less automatic now in life. And I can see it when it's rearing its ugly head, so to speak. And I know when I'm doing something for others and not for myself, or when I'm out of alignment and I'm asking something of myself for a purpose other than what I think my highest purpose really is. And I've started to prioritize that those things are more important to me than this cultural ideal that we have for what women are supposed to look like, an ideal that very few women can even achieve, and is probably not even all that healthy for us to strive for. I think whether you're 20 or 30 or 50 or 80, this is one that women, unfortunately, have been saddled with. I think the greatest thing we could do is separate ourselves from this urge to compare and compete. One of the most amazing compliments someone could pay to me is that, like, you're so kind, or you're so generous, or you're so caring, or I really appreciate the way you just try hard, or compliment each other in something other than your physical appearance. I mean, if I put on a ball gown and I look fucking amazing, tell me. But otherwise, tell me 3 other things about me that you admire. We could work on helping each other heal from this by supporting each other differently and competing with each other less. Because the competition that we have pitted ourselves in, I think only reinforces these terrible, 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 norms and ideals that are set out for us that are frankly unachievable. Sitting here in all of this, I thought was going to be really fucking intimidating, and I was really worried about it. And I had a couple weeks of like, I should probably starve myself to get ready for this kind of thing. Like, what else do I need to do? I actually don't really look any different than I did a month ago or 2 months ago or a year ago, but I feel so stunningly beautiful sitting here. And it's hard to even say that because I grew up in a family where you wouldn't say, I feel so beautiful today. Look at me. It was like don't get too big for your britches. Come on, Sarah. Like, quiet down. Come on, But I do. I feel really beautiful. I feel really sexy. I feel really empowered. I feel really whole. I feel just stunning. I really do. I feel like there's a light that just radiates out of me. It's not about the look. It's about just this sense of like feeling at peace with yourself, feeling connected to others, feeling appreciated and valued, feeling like you have a sense of purpose in the world, and that your physical body is just a vehicle for that. And that's like the essence of what I feel like today. I wish every woman and man, frankly, could have the experience I'm having right now, which is feeling so clearly that your voice, your experience, your essence matters. And that from that place, everything just flows and just feels right. I don't know how often in my life I'll get to feel this way. But the gratitude I feel is like insane right now. If you had told the 21-year-old self, the 21-year-old Sarah, that she would feel this way on that day when my hair was falling out and I was vomiting in a dorm bathroom and I was alone and thinking I was dying and that nobody cared, I wouldn't have believed it. So I think like there's just, it's miraculous. I recorded today's episode almost 10 months ago. And in preparation for our release of it, I watched it back. And I was so struck by a few things that I heard myself say that I felt it was worth having a little chat about them. The end of the episode is so emotional, and as I watched it back, I had tears streaming down my own face, hearing my own words. And what really struck me was this journey that I've been on over the last few decades to find comfort in my own skin, to feel comfortable in my physical self. And those tears at the end of the episode are so much about the joy I feel when I get to that place. But what struck me in listening to it again was how hard that's been. And I started asking myself, why? Why is it that as women, in particular as women, we are enculturated to step outside ourselves and view ourselves with the most critical eye, with the most critical lens? And that was my experience of constant criticism of myself. Too tall, too fat, too red, too big, too loud, too opinionated, too smart, too everything. Everything felt too much for me. And, I spent like 3 decades post-cancer treatment trying to find home in me. I've thought about this so much with respect to my parenting, not just my daughters, but especially my daughters, and how I've modeled for them how to do what I've been trying to do, and maybe do it a little more efficiently, or maybe live in the world differently so that they don't have to do it and it doesn't become such a struggle to just be comfortable with who they are. I have a daughter who's 16, and she is 5 feet 11 and a half inches. She is a spectacular basketball player, and all she wants is to be 6 feet tall. And all she dreams about lately is having bigger feet that can fit into my shoes. And I think about this all the time. Like, when I was 16, if someone had offered me a surgery where I could have cut off my toes and I could have shrunk my feet by 2 or 3 sizes, I would have done it. Because I would have done anything to feel normal, right? Normal as I defined it, to get rid of those big feet. And here she is, loving her body for what it can do, for the athlete she is, and finding community with other basketball players who are all, like when they greet each other at the beginning of a new season, there's this whole conversation about, oh my God, I think you got taller. That's amazing. And they stand back to back and they measure each other and they celebrate the extra inch they got, in the off season. I didn't have that. And she does. And I look at her and I just think, how can I help her preserve that? Whether she plays basketball or not. I challenge you to think about the language that you use when you speak about yourself. Somebody caught me a couple weeks ago. I said something like, I'm so critical. And he challenged me. He's like, are you really? Is that who you are? Critical? Because, I see you as a, loving, boundless, expansive, gorgeous human being. Do we really want to talk about ourselves that way? The language I use to describe myself around my kids is the language they will use to describe themselves. I challenge you to think about that too, as a parent. It takes so much effort to be intentional and conscious about all of these things, but the minute we start to do it and we start to catch ourselves in the patterns that we're in, these destructive ways of talking about ourselves, we invite others to do the same. My biggest wish for you, for them, is that we can find a way to treat ourselves with the grace and the love and the kindness that we give to others. We can speak to ourselves the way we speak to our best friends. We can honor who we are, and we can really think about what the essence of ourselves is, not the descriptors. And we can be just a little gentler, a little kinder, and bring that energy into the world. So that's what I invite you to think about today as you ponder this episode. I also like to hear about what it is that resonated with you. Do you have a Wholey Schmidt moment about how you think about yourself, your physical self, your relationship to your body image? Tell us about it. Our website has a little tool where you can tell us about your Wholey Schmidt moments, and we'd love to hear. It's Wholey Schmidt, WHOLEYSCHMIDT.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, please share in the comment section. Let's get a conversation going. Let's support each other in the challenges that we're facing and the ways in which we're confronting the pressures that we feel to be so critical of ourselves. You can also join the conversation on Instagram. And please don't forget to follow wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks.